that there's hardly any training given to the information providers in the new management skills. There's lack of use of information technology, and the PIO offices do not have adequate staff. Now, these are some of the things which probably make us think as to what we do. It has been 6 years, and what we need to do. Lack of awareness, problem with information seekers, problem with information providers, and we all have to look into this and discuss. I'm extremely grateful to Ms. Nandini Sahai, who has been organizing the series of seminars with our collaboration, and especially to Ms. Aruna Roy and presenting, and all of you. I'm sure we'll have a very interesting discussion on this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Mr. Nikhil Dey, the co-convener of National Campaign for People's Right to Information, to make the special address.
Nandini, Rajesh Dayal, Colin Kariji, Mr. Kini, Aruna, and everyone else who's present here, all fellow travelers, I think, in this journey. Yesterday we were in that for part of the time, because we had to come over here, in the function where the PM spoke in Delhi, celebration or a review of RTI, and they were saying the way forward, I think is how they titled it. And Aruna was asked by one of the journalists, I just overheard one of the TV camera people saying, we want an interview. मैडम, हम देखना चाहते हैं, हम आपसे पूछना चाहते हैं कि ये 6 साल के बच्चे के स्वास्थ्य की क्या हालत है? What is the state of health of the 6-year-old child called RTI? I think it's a very interesting question in some ways, because of course a TV bite cannot give an answer, but many days of discussion can give some answers, and all answers will be partly right and partly wrong. Just as what Mr. Dayal just presented in the PricewaterhouseCoopers study, it's very interesting. You could say 49% of the people of the PIOs, or 49% of the people did not have boards in their offices, which actually 100% should have. But that 51% had boards amazes me. Because actually, if you look at the implementation of any law in this country, there just isn't that kind of awareness. There isn't that kind of implementation. And something that is as radical as the right to information, given the circumstances in our particular country, one also has to see, we have to keep fighting for it to reach 100%. But we also have to, when we try and look at the health of our child, we also have to recognize how much progress it has in some ways made under the most difficult of circumstances. And in some ways it's a little bit like when one looks at a child in a poor home, or looks at a child in very difficult circumstances in a tribal village, and one is amazed, how does this child survive? If you look at what all of us do in our homes to look after our own children, you give them all the best things, you make sure that water is boiled not once but 3 times. I know in affluent homes what all is done. And then you go into a village and you see how a child is dealt with, and how that child survives. It's something in that human spirit, and something in the fact that the child is meant to survive. I think in that sense, RTI in a democracy is meant to survive. It's meant to go forward. It has its own momentum. And I think today, 6 years later, we should celebrate that particular fact, that it is here to stay, that it is part of the human spirit, that it is something that will go ahead no matter what kind of opposition comes in its way. And it's a child that's actually leading to many, many other things. And we are seeing it all around. Today, if there's a discussion about corruption, what is it? It's a transformation, beginning of this transformation from questions of transparency to questions of accountability. That is the essence of it. It is saying that, okay, now we have managed to put our foot in the door and try and manage to get information out. Now we want action on that. And that action is being pushed more and more by people through RTI. But it is also asking for ways and means of that action. And that's why I think some of the things, and Aruna and I will speak about our particular perspective, but I think, and I'll talk about it a little bit during the course of these 10 minutes, but I think one thing that one must recognize is that when you are looking at these conflicts that exist, these struggles that exist, these differences that exist all around between government and those outside, between rulers and those outside, between campaigns and between different perspectives, there is a need for us to start applying our mind and not, at least amongst ourselves, paint everything in one single color, because we won't make progress. We do need to apply ourselves to the details of what goes on to see where we can strategically make a difference, what are the kinds of things that we have faced in the past, and opportunities like this particular conference is that kind of opportunity to step back and look forward. When we look at the RTI, just basically it began what Nandini talked about years ago and what Mr. Dayal talked about as a small struggle in a small rural area. And it is again the credit of the RTI, not to us, that issue had so much resonance. It is to the credit of ordinary people that they kept at it. People actually who one would never expect to be able to fight, who had the tenacity to fight. People who were not people who went to school, women who had not gone to school, who kept that initial bit forward so that it raised a certain profile and allowed it to go forward. The rural people who we've been privileged to be a part of. But after that, RTI had its own momentum and it caught on. It was a spark that caught on everywhere. And it's carried on, that's spreading very much forward. So we saw something move from a struggle to the elements of a campaign where people like Nandini and many others, Nikhil Chakravarti, Kuldeep Nayyar, a national campaign for people's right to information was formed in '96. And then the campaign and many struggles leading to a law. And in the rare instance that RTI is, I think this is one law that is actually helping a movement. Very often the law becomes the culmination of a movement and the movement dies down. But this is a law that is giving birth not to just one movement but many movements, because it is opening up many closed areas. So overall, today we have a law which is a movement, and a movement which is a law, but a movement which is many other things. It is campaigns, it is struggles, it is a law. And overall, in that perspective of often we ask ourselves, activists ask ourselves, that when we use the term movement, do we use it very loosely? Is there something, an energy of its own that distinguishes a movement from something what may be driven by one person or one organization? And RTI has definitely got, to my mind, all the elements of a movement. Because MKSS may disappear, NCPRI may disappear, Wiki may disappear, whoever may disappear. But RTI and its seeds will continue to spread through many other organizations and people, and that's what makes it a movement. But we need to learn now in this movement. If we really want it to be effective, we need to learn from parts of it. So I think we have a responsibility as campaigns. Individuals will have a lot of problems. What will distinguish in this movement, because there are many individuals using RTI in very powerful ways, unable to deal with the backlash. But at least campaigns have that advantage and therefore that responsibility of being able to apply their minds to it. And I think that's something we need to do. And we need to have a challenge of perspective. What is it that we are seeing that's good and bad? What is it that we see in these figures that come, whether they come from the figures of a PricewaterhouseCoopers study, or similarly at the same time another study was taken up almost on the same scale that was done by this group called RAG, where many of us movements also participated. And it's interesting that we came up with similar figures in different ways. So we need to, when today we are saying that towards strengthening participatory democracy, then what do we mean by that participatory democracy? It's a very important question. often we hear this term Naukar and Malik, which we have used ourselves also. That the citizen is the sovereign and therefore he is the Malik or she is the Malik, they are the Malik, we are the Malik. And people in government are the Naukar. In some ways it's entirely true because the sovereign is the Malik. But I think that there is a need for a change in that. There is a need for equality. Because in participation there needs to be a kind of an equality of relationship. Neither are we Maliks nor are they Maliks. Neither are we Naukars nor are they Naukars. There is a kind of a partnership and an equality of partnership in this relationship. There is a responsibility from both sides and there are sets of rights that of course exist amongst the people because they are the ones who have to be served through this whole kind of thing. But those who are engaging in this, all of us even in campaigns realize that we also have extraordinary amounts of power. We realize from the smallest village, someone who's an RTI activist, as he gets recognized as an RTI activist, and we are facing these issues, all of us, that there is misuse of RTI. Why does that misuse come? Because it comes out of power. Today, with an RTI application, all of us are in some ways empowered. And those sitting in government are most empowered. So we do have to remove those concentrations of power. And we need to get, that's why actually in the RTI Act, in the proviso in section 88(1)(a), it says basically that no information will be denied to a citizen that cannot be denied to a member of parliament. So it basically equates us. It doesn't make us higher or doesn't make us lower. It says that the member of parliament or the member of the legislature, their powers emanate from us. And therefore our powers and their powers are at an equal level. And that it's a very interesting thing. So when you go, you again have the same sense of participation also that's necessary from the passage of a law to its implementation. That is also very necessary, and that's something perhaps today we should engage with. That what will the role of the RTI activist be, and the role of RTI be in bringing about this participatory democracy? And that's where the last thing that I'd like to sort of bring to your notice and hope that we can discuss over today, and maybe even part of tomorrow, but today certainly, that RTI was a paradigm shift for many reasons, but the most important reason was that it empowered the ordinary citizen and it disempowered these concentrations of power. Therefore, it involved the ordinary person, every single one on an equal basis. Nobody amongst us has a greater right to use RTI or a lesser right to use RTI. And it empowered us in a way that we could ask questions and answers had to be given. And it's only answers. But in those answers lie the future of what is right and wrong. The capacity to be able to debate what is going on correctly and what is not going on correctly. The capacity to be able to monitor. The capacity to be able to be proved wrong in some cases. Because it's not that at the end of that RTI, you always get what it is that you want. Sometimes you realize that actually the system is doing many things, and we do have to also recognize that this is a structure that finally we have to, in participation, we have to be able to find solutions where we can be a part of that solution. So it is good to say that there are many things that are going wrong. It is even more important to say what kind of solutions we can find that we can be a part of. That's where the NCPRI has had a critique of the Lokpal. Today we won't go through it now. In the evening there's a lecture where we'll discuss that. But where the NCPRI critique of the Lokpal has come actually from this essential core element, and I won't go into the details, that the Lokpal seeks solutions in an even more powerful authority. And our experience from RTI is that actually power is what has corrupted. And more power will corrupt even more and more. So what are the guarantees? Certainly the problems we are all in common agreement with. That there are problems at every level, there is corruption at every level, there is misuse of power at every level. The Patwari takes a bribe, I don't know what the Patwari is called in Goa, the land records person. the Talati, Maharashtra also is Talati. So the Talati takes a bribe because you cannot get your land record from that person unless you give him a certain amount of money. Takes a bigger bribe if you want him to manipulate that record. It's his power that he holds that we can't do. The BDO, the SDO, the collector all use their power and abuse their power, actually. Abuse their power to take a bribe. The biggest and most powerful person who takes bribes is the police. Because they not only have power of the paper in their hands, they have the power of the danda in their hands also. So in many places, the police is the most powerful person. Now we are saying in the Lokpal that we will create an even more powerful police person to sort these problems out. The NCPRI's main set of questions and critique has been, we need to sort the issues out and problems out, but perhaps not by empowering someone else who may end up being an even bigger problem for the rest of us. It is to search for other solutions